Sir, how do you see the current conflict between Iran and Israel? Do you think that this conflict is going to lead a third world war?
It is a very heavy subject. This needs to be dissected at several levels. At the domestic level in this region of several countries, at the regional level and at the global level. Because as you know, 2/3 of the energy is located in this region, and almost 35 to 40% of the global oil and gas flows from the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz. And there is no other area in the world which can immediately replace if the oil infrastructure is destroyed in the 6-7 countries of the Gulf.
Hello and welcome to the Forum for Global Studies latest podcast. I'm Dr. Sandeep Tripathi. Today we are going to discuss current conflict between Iran and Israel with India's topmost voice on West Asia, Professor Aftab Kamal Pasha. Sir, we heartily welcome you to Forum for Global Studies.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep Tripathi, for having me on this program at your Global Institute.
Professor A.K. Pasha has been professor at JNU. He has served as a chairperson and currently director at Gulf Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. At the same time, he has also been a director at Maulana Azad Center for Indian Culture at the Indian Embassy, Egypt. Long experience on West Asia, approximate 60 books. He has authored, edited, and co-edited. So it's so long experience on West Asia. So I'm sure that my audience will enjoy this episode, especially to these very important issues today, which is going on across the world. And the recent conflict, it has wide implications on regional security, on India's foreign policy, as well as across the globe. So thank you so much for joining us. Now let me start this conversation by asking the first question. Sir, how do you see the current conflict between Iran and Israel? Do you think that this conflict is going to lead a third world war?
Well, before answering your question, we need to go back a little while to the events about 6 months ago. That is the October 7th events when Hamas entered Israel. And after that, how Israel entered Gaza. You know, that is the immediate context of what we are witnessing, barrage of missiles and attacks on each other's territory between Israel and Iran. Although the Iranian-Israeli war of words and their clandestine activities against each other date back to at least 2008, since 2008. But before coming to the present crisis, let me take the viewers to the events which took place since October 7th, because what happened on October 7th is the direct link for your question between Israel and Iran. Because the Palestinians, especially the Palestinians in Gaza affiliated to Hamas, had convinced themselves that, the Israeli authorities, along with global powers, that is Western powers, they are trying to undermine the Palestinian cause or virtually bury their cause, which has been the center of their fight and struggle for nearly 100 years, since 1917, when the Balfour Declaration took place, when Israel was created in 48, and then since then several wars which have taken place between the Israelis and the neighboring countries. But we need not go into all of those wars. But what is significant to remember is the suffering and the struggle of the Palestinian people has been long-standing, and it exploded on October 7th. And Israel, of course, had been making incursions into Gaza several times before it withdrew in 2005 and afterwards also, which led to killings and withdrawal and ceasefire, pacification, and normalcy on the Israeli-Gaza border. But this time, as you know, Israel has a right-wing government which believes that the entire former territory of Palestine, including Gaza and West Bank, and the entire city of Palestine belongs to them because the colonial Palestine territory included West Bank and Gaza also. So they believe that this entire Palestine should be under their effective Israeli control. But this has been resisted not only by the Palestinians, but international law and world community doesn't accept Israeli viewpoint that West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem should be part of Israel, although some countries have recognized. So this is the background in which things have developed. Along with that is the northern territory of Israel, Lebanon, which is dominated by Hezbollah. Hezbollah, as you know, it fired a series of missiles and artillery shells in solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza and demanded a ceasefire that in support of Hamas and Palestine, Hezbollah is putting pressure on Israel to stop this war and killings and what they called as genocide of the Palestinians. So this was the second factor. Third factor. First was the internal Israeli situation, then the Hamas factor, then the Israeli factor. Then you have other supporters of Palestine cause, namely the Houthis in Yemen, who have attacked international ships in the Red Sea and virtually blockaded, and for which UK and the United States have retaliated by bombing certain places in Yemen, which has not deterred the Yemenis or the Houthis. Then the other element is the Popular Mobilization Front and other such non-state actors in Iraq who have also shown their solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza and fired missiles at Israel, both at Haifa and at Eilat and other places. So all of these in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Hamas, in Iraq, they are seen as proxies of Iran. Because Iran, since 1979, as you know, has an Islamic government. It has declared Islamic Republic after overthrowing the Shah of Iran. And since then, the United States, Israel, and the Western countries have been working tirelessly to overthrow the mullah regime there and bring back the Shah of Iran. So in order to stabilize and safeguard its regime, the Iranians have adopted this policy of offense as the best part of defense, especially after the Iran-Iraq war, in which they suffered immensely between 80 and 88. So after 88, they identified that their supporters have to be redoubled. So they first signed the strategic agreement with Syria, and then after Israeli invasion of Lebanon, they created the Hezbollah, which has been armed and financed and supported by the Iranians. And then, of course, after the American invasion of Iraq in 2003, they extended their influence through the Shias, Sunnis, Kurds, others in Iraq also. Along with that, the civil war in Yemen also gave them an opportunity to identify themselves with the Zaydis, who are otherwise known as Houthis. They are also a branch of Shia. So they have been supporting them for a long time in many ways. So the Iranians, in order to safeguard the Islamic Republic from the continuous threats to their regime stability from the GCC countries, from earlier by Saddam Hussein and by Israel and by the United States and West, they have gone on the offensive and created these non-state actors. So, in essence, what is happening is a war between Iran and its proxies through Israel with the United States. The United States is the main party not only in defending Israel, but also its allies like the GCC countries, like through its presence in Iraq and Egypt and so on and so forth. So the United States also is a major party in the regional flare-up, along with Russia, which is solidly with the Syrian regime for the last couple of years, arming them and giving diplomatic and other support. So in a way, what has happened is the root cause of this instability, of this turmoil, of this violence, is the non-resolution of the Palestinian conflict, which has been persisting for a long time. And since 1979, as you know, before 79, Iran had very close relations with the state of Israel during the Shah of Iran. But after the revolution, they kicked out the Israeli embassy and handed over to the PLO. And since 79, they have been celebrating the last Friday of the Ramadan month as Quds Day in support of the legitimacy of the third Islamic holiest place, that is Jerusalem. So they celebrate this Al-Quds Day, hoping that they will liberate Jerusalem from Israeli control, which is with them since 1967 effectively. So this Quds Day has been used to mobilize the Iranian support to the Palestine cause, along with their multiple fronts, because you should remember that the Iranian revolution was trained and armed and supported by the Palestinians in Lebanon. The Palestinians trained the Iranian revolutionaries, whether it is Mujahideen Khalq, Fidain Khalq, or other desperate groups of Iranians. They had their training, and in the armed struggle against the Shah, the Palestinians played a very important role. So the root cause is the disaffection of the Palestinians and the solidarity of the Iranians with the Palestinians. And that has now come to the surface of boiling point between Iran and Israel. And 1st of April saw the Israeli attack on the embassy of Iran in Damascus, which was a continuation of the Israeli policy of bombing and killing Iranian Revolutionary Guards leaders and the infrastructure which Iran has been trying to build in Syria in support of the Palestinians or Syria and against Israel. So since 1st April, the stakes were elevated to a higher level, and Iran could not have tolerated this and remained silent in the face of the killing of such senior. And what we saw was the barrage of missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and armed drones sent by Iran on 13th of this month, which of course were shot down mostly by the Americans, along with the British and the French and the Jordanians and the intelligence from UAE and Saudi Arabia. Not much damaged in Israel, except minor to okay, so this in brief answers your first question.
Okay, thank you so much for this historical, highlights that the way historical animosity between Iran and Israel. My question was, will it lead to any kind of third world war? Because lots of speculation, lots of discussion on this topic, on this issue. How do you see?
It's you see we should not very lightly discuss the issue of third world war. It is not any bilateral war or involving one or two countries. It is a very, 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 very heavy subject. This needs to be dissected at several levels. At the domestic level in this region of several countries, at the regional level, and at the global level. A glimpse of it I was given. First, we start with the domestic situation in Israel. because Israel believes that not only it should control the entire Palestine, but it also has to eliminate any potential adversary in this region. So Israel identifies Iran as a major challenger to its deterrence, to its military superiority in this region, and opposing the normalization of relations between Israel and the Arab countries. So Israel identifies Iran as a major adversary. And it also is aware of the Russian and Chinese support to Iran, along with the military capability which Iran has developed over the last 25 to 30 years, at least after the Iran-Iraq war. So the domestic Israeli compulsions link to the regional and to the global levels where it is supported by the United States to a certain extent, and some major European countries like Britain, France, Germany, and others from West Europe. Plus, of course, you have New Zealand and South Africa, of course, and the World Jewish lobbies and groups, which is not to be underestimated. But the Israeli factor is not the sole factor which is pushing the events to the global war which you are talking about, or the Third World War. The other regional players which are actively involved in this are Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the other GCC countries plus Egypt, which are equally worried about the growing strength and power and capability of Iran and its diplomacy to mobilize China and Russia on its sides, along with other partners around the globe. So these allies, these Arab states are allies of the United States. And they, of course, form a formidable group, but they are not very sure whether the United States will come to their rescue if there is a real war between Iran and the Gulf countries, especially. So this raises the point whether Israel would be able to contain Iranian capability on its own, or the United States will help Iran to contain, will help Israel to contain Iran. So now it is an open question. Biden openly says that he is not interested in supporting Israel to escalate the war with Iran. So at the moment, the United States is off the table as far as attack and containing or neutralizing the Iranian capability. But equally, the Gulf states are nervous about any confrontation either between Israel and Iran or the United States through Israel with Iran. Because the Iranians have made it very clear that if there is an attack on Iran, either by Israel or jointly between Israel and the United States, Iran would respond to 14 attacks on the bases which houses US troops in this 7 countries. That is the 6 GCC countries plus Iraq, and also in Syria in Northeast, which is controlled by the United States. So these 7 bases of the United States contain roughly about 50,000 US soldiers. And they have stationed something like almost 200 fighter planes. And they have a huge military naval presence in Bahrain as the 5th Fleet in Manama. And of course, intelligence gathering through the Central Command in Qatar and Doha. So imagine if there is an attack to neutralize Iranian nuclear plants or its oil and gas infrastructure or other military industrial complex in Iran. Iran would respond, and it has the capability, and it has shown that it can use its capability to defend itself. So which means it will be not only a war between Iran, US, and Israel, but also Iranian response to the GCC country plus Iraq and the northeastern part of Syria. So the domestic Israeli position, the regional position is getting intermixed. And now we go to the global situation. After the virtual defeat of the West in Ukraine, where Russia has not been able to dislodge from the territories it occupied for the last year and a half. The Western focus has been to the Middle East or West Asia, because the sanctions on Russia and the military support to Ukraine has not really led to containing Russia or leading to the overthrow of Putin, or in any way undermining the alliance between Russia and China, and support by other global countries to Russia in this war, including India's indirect support to Russia and import of Russian oil for the last 2 years or so. So the regional situation is getting linked increasingly with the global situation. And if there is an attack on the GCC countries by Iran, this will immediately lead to the spiraling of the oil prices and gas prices. Because, as you know, 2/3 of the energy is located in this region, and almost 35 to 40% of the global oil and gas flows from the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz. And there is no other area in the world which can immediately replace if the oil infrastructure is destroyed in the 6, 7 countries of the Gulf. So it will lead to not only inflation, but also global economic upheaval. And already the Western economies are suffering, especially Europe, because of the denial of Russian oil and gas and economic interaction between EU and Russia. The Europeans are going through very high inflation and very high energy costs. And this has also spread to Canada and the United States, also where the inflation has been raging. So this will compound the economic problems, along with no guarantee of success militarily, as far as Iran is concerned, because Iran is no banana republic or Madagascar or Rwanda, where it can be bombed out. It has shown sufficient capability. Not only it has a strong navy, it has also this almost a million strong force, both the regular army and the Revolutionary Guards and other paramilitary forces. And it has equipped with Russian surface-to-air missiles, SS-300 and 400. And we don't know how much lethal support China is giving or North Korea is giving to Iran. So put together all of this, it will be an uphill task either for Israel or for the United States to completely eliminate the Iranian capability. And I don't think that Russia and China would allow this kind of a situation, which would be undermining their own global position. So in that way, you see, this struggle or the world war which you are talking about emanates from Gaza, through Israel, through Lebanon, through Houthis, through Iraq, Iran, the GCC countries, and the linkages between the Europeans and the Americans through Israel over the oil and strategic linkages in this part of the region to a larger issue, and that is the polarization of the world. That is the international based order which the United States and the West claim to uphold, and the challenge from Russia, China, India, Iran, Turkey, and South Africa, Brazil, BRICS, and other countries to this so-called rules-based order, which has adopted double standards, one in Ukraine and another one in Gaza. So in that way, this is a pointer towards the struggle to reshape the world order. And if more and more countries get sucked into this West Asian war situation, this may plunge the world into the third world war. But I don't think we are heading immediately towards that. But you never know one leader like Hitler who dragged Europe into the Second World War. In order for Netanyahu to survive the Gaza event and the October 7th event and his own charges of criminal even criminal issues which the Supreme Court is investigating. He's determined to fight to the end. And we don't know what this individual would do, either on his own, whether he's satisfied with the war he has waged in Gaza, or whether he will launch attack on Hezbollah, or he will launch desperation attack on Israel on a much bigger scale. Because what happened yesterday, Iranians are saying that it is mostly internal, that drones were launched from within the Iranian territory by its enemies, and they don't suspect that it was Israeli attack on Iran in Isfahan or any other place. So, which means Israel has still not attacked or responded to the Iranian attack of April 13th. So, in that way, you see, this in one individual is to be watched very carefully to your answer whether we are heading towards the Third World War. But surely, step by step, we are inching towards that.
Thank you so much, Professor Pasha, for your observation, for your insights that it looks like we are heading towards the Third World War, but it is just like also posturing, flexing muscles from both sides, from Iran, from Israel. But one thing is that that you mentioned that already world is suffering from the kind of inflation of the Russia-Ukraine war, like energy issue, and the 40% oil and gas, especially oil, and control this region. So, do you think that this economic question is very crucial over the political question?
Yes, indeed. You see, that is the basic factor which is driving countries to politically take these positions, whether it is the veto which is used in the UN Security Council, or the diplomatic support which is given to Israel or by Russia to Iran or Syria. Because the deprivation of the sanctions on Russian oil and gas, has led to a very important imbalance in the global energy market. Russia, as you know, is the largest supplier of gas and major oil producer. In fact, the topmost Russian oil exporter in the world. So Russia is concluding deals with different countries, bypassing dollar. Like India, it is now said that it mostly used its currency and bought Russian oil through rubles, etc. And Iran also is doing the same with Russia and China. And something like 32 countries, we of course are doing with UAE and other countries. About 32 countries in the world have now already abandoned dollar, and they are trading in their currencies, either in Chinese yuan or the ruble or their own currency. So you see, although still oil is marketed in terms of dollar, but increasingly dollar is under challenge by growing countries, and there is this feeling that you see, Russia, the United States, which has $32 trillion of debt, and which has to pay every month or quarter 1 trillion of debt, which it has borrowed from around the world, is not likely to sustain this high level of debt. So in that way, the economic situation is going to decide the United States will act through military means or how it will deal with additional military challenges. So the economic situation is getting more and more desperate, not only for Russia, but also for the innumerable sanctions which the United States has imposed on China and about 20 countries around the world, including this Iran and Turkey and so on and so forth. As you know, we were also under sanctions of the United States and West from 1974 when we had PNE, and again in 1998, and only they were lifted in 2010 when Barack Obama visited. So we have also suffered the US and Western sanctions for long. So the Western countries are adopting this sanctions policy basically because of economic compulsions, because they want to perpetuate through the international multilateral organizations which have been established since Second World War, like the World Bank, IMF, and various multilateral organizations, which are being increasingly questioned now by China and Russia and BRICS and other countries, that they are one-sided, and also lack of reforms in the UN, which India has been urging to get a permanent seat in the Security Council. So the economic factor is indeed very crucial, because the development, the survivability and sustainability of the economies at this level, and also the feeling that in this unequal economic world order, the West has been exploiting the global South through many ways, through their policies of reducing subsidies and so on and so forth. So in that way, if the dollar is challenged increasingly, and if it comes under pressure, if more and more oil producing countries accept other countries other than dollar, the United States will feel that its global superpower status, which is sustained through dollar, is also being undermined along with the military political challenges. So in that way, economic factor is going to be the driving force for what these global and regional actors do in the coming months.
Thank you so much, Professor Pasha. The last question to you, sir. How do you see the India's stake on this, especially this escalation between Iran and Israel? The moment when India's dependency on the Middle East, especially on energy issues, 85% dependency on this region, and India is just like the third largest consumer on crude oil. So how do you think this India? So this situation is very vulnerable to India, especially.
Yes, indeed. You see, our stakes are very high in the Gulf region and beyond, in West Asia and North Africa, for at least 5 reasons. One is, of course, you mentioned the energy security. Bulk of our oil and gas comes from the Gulf region, entirely the gas from Qatar, oil from about 7 countries. Along with the energy security, you have the human security. We have about 9 million workers in the Gulf countries who send about $60+ billion of foreign exchange every year. And that is in demand for Indian labor is growing. Third is the trade. GCC countries alone, their trade with India is over $125 billion. Then, of course, you have the investments from Saudi Arabia, from UAE, from Qatar, and from other countries. That is also an important factor. Then the fourth factor is the food security. As you know, since we don't have gas, natural gas, we have not been able to produce chemical fertilizer in the country. With the result, we import most of the chemical fertilizers from this region. From Oman, from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from Jordan, from Morocco, and other countries which have rock phosphate, and they produce chemical fertilizers. So for
Yes.
food security also, this Gulf region is extremely important. We have 5 basic or strategic interests in the Gulf region. One is, as you pointed out, the energy security is extremely important, because more than 85% of our oil and, of course, the gas exclusively from Qatar comes from the GCC countries plus Iraq. Earlier, we used to buy from Iran also, but now because of the situation, sanctions and other issues, we have virtually stopped buying Iranian oil. So energy security is extremely important. We try to diversify our oil requirements to avoid this heavy dependence on the Gulf countries by importing Russian oil and from Africa and Latin America and Southeast Asia. But that has not proved to be commercially viable because of the transport cost, because of the high insurance cost, and the non-reliability of the suppliers. So we have tried and tested from all over the world to increase or enhance our energy security. But now we have essentially come down to buying bulk of our oil requirements from Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, uh, essentially, and gas almost exclusively from Qatar. So energy remains our weak point as far as economic development of India is concerned. You know, if there is any turbulence or turmoil in this Gulf region, either war or revolution or attack or foreign intervention, you know, it has affected Indian oil supplies from this region a number of times. I can point out in 1973, oil prices went up, which increased our economic problems, which ultimately led to the emergency in 1975. Then the Iranian Revolution in 79 sent the oil prices skyrocketing. The third one was the Iran-Iraq war between 80-88. We lost supplies from both Iran and Iraq, and Iraq was supplying on behalf of the Soviet Union also. Then we had the Kuwait crisis in 1990-91 when Saddam invaded Kuwait. That was another oil shock. And then, of course, the continuous sanctions on Iraq also led to major economic energy problems for India. And since then, we have been witnessing, you know, very high oil prices because of continuous turmoil between Iran and the Gulf countries and Israel and the United States. So getting energy, secure energy sources has become a major focus of the Indian government since 73. And although we have signed major agreements, long-term agreements, but you know, any moment these oil supplies may get disrupted because of the volatile situation there. Then the second important factor is our workers, whose welfare and security is important, and also for the foreign exchange which they send in bulk. Like we suffered in Kuwait when Iraq invaded in 1990, we had to evacuate hundreds and thousands of Indian workers. So if there is any attack by Iran or any other development in the GCC countries, you know, we'll have to airlift or move the Indian workers who are over 90 lakhs there in the 6 GCC countries. Then you have the trade, which is growing between India and the GCC countries, which might be disrupted, and the investments also from these countries, which are very important for our economic development. Then, of course, the food security, as I pointed out, due to lack of gas, we have been importing fertilizers from these countries because of the availability of rock phosphate in Jordan, Morocco, and availability of gas. We have set up IFCO, and other plants have been set up in Oman and private sector in Egypt and Jordan and various other countries in the region. So for food security also, this region is extremely important. From the maritime security also, this region is important because of the turmoil in Yemen and Somalia, and what has happened in the Red Sea, and the movement of our ships through the Red Sea to Suez Canal, and the oil tankers which bring gas tankers also. So in that way, our cooperation with some of these Gulf countries is important for maintaining maritime security. And you see, this region, because of this Palestine problem and extremism and terrorism and religious groups and foreign intervention and all of these problems, you know, this has also led to growth of various extreme ideologies, whether it is Wahhabism or from other countries, which is impacting our secular system of governance here. Although very few Indian citizens have participated in the Afghan war or the Islamic State or any other violent activities there. But, we cannot remain immune from the fire which is raging in West Asia. So we have to take care of the issue of violence, terrorism, and other things also. And cooperation with the Gulf countries is and other countries is extremely important, including Israel. So, in 1992, we established full diplomatic relations with Israel, and they have grown into strategic partnership. It has become a major arms supplier, and we import quite a lot of equipment for medical purposes, for agricultural purposes, and for security purposes, so on and so forth. So Israel has emerged as an important partner. So if there is any turmoil in the Gulf region, India is, as the foreign minister S. Jaishankar pointed out, we are going to lose billions of dollars, and it will affect our economy. Just as I pointed out, the 73 oil price rise from the Arab countries impacted our economy by high inflation and strikes and demonstrations by public sector workers and turmoil in the Indian economy, which led to the one of the contributory factors for Mrs. Gandhi to implement domestic emergency was the 73 turmoil. And successive governments also have tackled this rise in oil prices and shortage of oil and gas in a variety of ways. But if there is major conflagration in the region involving the GCC countries, Iran, Israel, and the United States, and if the Russians and the Chinese also get sucked up, we are going to suffer immeasurably. So it is incumbent on Indian diplomacy, Indian leaders, Ministry of External Affairs to play a proactive role in persuading Israel, persuading Iran and other countries to de-escalate the situation and focus on the root cause of the problem, that is Palestine issue, and see how best the grievances of the Palestinians can be addressed in a peaceful way, either through an international peace conference or attending to the reconstruction of Gaza or reducing the level of violence in the West Bank and so on and so forth. So in that way, the normalization of the process in this region is extremely important. Since we have good relations with Israel, the United States, with Iran, and with the Gulf countries, we should take initiative. We have been very docile and not active, although our interests demand that we should play a proactive role, either through the Iranians or through the Israelis or through the other Arab countries, in order to show that our concerns are real, genuine, and that any escalation, either directly with the regional players or with our partners in Russia and other countries, we need to play a much more robust role in the region to stabilize this region, to work for peace, security, and stability. Otherwise, our growth rate may be affected. It's projected at 6.5, and the need to contain inflation, need to create jobs, and see the challenges from China and other countries is emerging. Without the cooperation and stability and peace in the Gulf region, this would be an uphill task for Indian diplomacy.
Thank you so much, sir, for your deep insights on a very important topic, and the way you highlighted why this region is so crucial for India's energy security, food security, as well as the maritime security. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and giving your precious time on this very important issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.